You're good.
Coach, when you obviously we got the House settlement that might or might not get approved here today or this week. When you're looking at your roster, and you look above that number 105, have you guys already made decisions, or are you waiting to see what happens before you tell players one thing or another?
Um,
How hard is that?
yeah, it's challenging, right? You're trying to figure out what you can do for fall camp on July 30th, and it's approaching June, and we still really don't have much of a resolution on what that's going to look like. And so we've tried to be as honest as we could with kids about what the different scenarios are. Right after we got done with all of those conversations centered around a number of 105, it shifted, right? And so then there was another conversation that needed to be had, and so I think the best thing you can do is just be honest with the kids, communicate with the kids, and empathize to some degree about the uncertainty, because it's more for them. That's what I've said to a lot of them. It's certainly it's challenging for us to manage a roster, but it's more challenging for a 19-year-old to not know what his place on a football team is as we head into the summer. It's an awkward situation, and so hopefully we get a resolution sooner rather than later.
Coach, when you look back 5 years ago when NIL, the inception of NIL, 5 years later, universities potentially, if it's approved, the House settlement will be cutting checks to players. Is that something that you thought about? It's sunk in that we've gone this far in a span of 5.5 years now, where universities will now be paying players.
I think that maybe from a coaching perspective, we maybe saw where this was going when NIL became a reality. I don't know that everybody else really anticipated it. I think we knew what was going to happen and where this thing was going to go, and so yeah, I don't think any of it's a surprise to us. I think once that can got opened, I think we all kind of saw where it was going to head.
So is 105 enough, and why isn't that enough? I mean, Billy Napier, for example, talked about this NFL study. I don't know from where, but 119 players cycle through each team annually. I don't know if that number's high or what, but why do you need more than 105? I mean, a lot of people feel like that should be enough, but a lot of coaches don't.
I think the biggest challenge from our perspective is we don't have access to a revolving roster situation during the season. I think if it was 105 that could stay 105, I think it would be enough. I think the fear that we have is, you get a rash of injuries in the NFL, you go to the free agent wire and you fix it. You get a rash of injuries for us, and there's no out, there's no option, there's nothing you can do. And so I think it's more just the comparisons that are being made in some ways aren't, in our eyes, the same, because again, if it was 105 and it stayed that way, great. If I lose two long snappers, where do I get my third one? If he doesn't fit into the 105 number, like, what do I do? It's a pretty important position, and I think that's the part of it that's a little bit worrisome to us.
The House settlement, when there's a ruling on it, how prepared is the program to kind of hit the ground running, especially with the amount of that 20.5 million that the football program will get? Do you have an idea, or you're working with a number that is what you think will be it'll be?
Yeah, I think obviously you've kind of worked through a whole bunch of different scenarios and situations, and again, it's challenging because these rules are supposedly going to be implemented if the House settlement goes through fairly quickly, and the season is also approaching fairly quickly, and so I couldn't imagine a professional sports league going into their off season, midway through their off season, changing the salary cap rules. But it appears as though that's what we're going to try to do, and so we'll kind of see how it works out.
Last year, you guys, record-wise, were in good shape through end of October, and then lost three out of the last four. Have you identified? Was that schedule stiffening? Was it something else? Have you identified, what kind of happened those last few games?
Yeah, I think I think it was a lot of things. I think one, we were in a situation that we hadn't been in before, and we played back-to-back night games on the road in the SEC as the team, the team that was being hunted, and I don't know that we handled that particularly well. Certainly not down at South Carolina. I think Auburn, I think we fought better and competed better, and then when you look at it, it comes down to a double overtime game, and us just trying to find a way to make another play, and then I think went back and forth toe to toe with a team that wound up in the NCAA semifinals and didn't get the job done in the last one, and so I think each one of them had their own kind of separate piece, but I think part of it is, and I've said this before to the team, success is never linear. And so I think when you're trying to build a program from where we were to where we want to be or where we should be, you want it to go smooth and you want it to go easy. It doesn't always work like that, and that doesn't mean that things aren't going in the right direction. It just means you got to make some adjustments and fix it moving forward.
Mike, you had an event recently where you talked about Texas A&M becoming the premier program in college football. I guess what's the thing that gives you the most confidence that that can actually happen?
Yeah, I think we've got a tremendous fan base. I think we've got a tremendous resource situation. I think when kids come to watch a game in Kyle Field, the environment is unbelievable. I think they would argue that it's one of the best, if not the best, in the country. I think we've got a talent-rich state that we're recruiting from, and I think if we can pull it all together and get it moving in the right direction the way it's capable of, I think we have all of the boxes checked for what this program could and should be moving forward. I think we have to understand where we are and understand that we can't just want to be somewhere else and just snap a finger and get there. It's going to take a little bit of a process. When you look at perception of where we've been versus reality of where we've been, there's some work we have to do to become the program we're capable of becoming, and we're doing that on a day-to-day basis in the inside parts of our program, and see a lot of development, a lot of improvement, a lot of things moving in a really good direction. But it doesn't happen just overnight, and I think that's the thing that we've got to be careful with.
Mike, how's Marcel handling the responsibilities that come with being the quarterback at Texas A&M? How's he handling that this spring?
Yeah, I think he's been really good. I think obviously this is a good time because nobody's critiquing him. He hasn't lost a game, and so that's the easy part. But happy with how he's working, happy with the improvement he's made in terms of studying tape and doing the things that you want QB1 to do to develop and grow. Happy with the strides he made in the throw game in the spring. I think he'll continue to do that through the summer, and so Marcel's a great kid. He's obviously got a great family. His dad has instilled in him a lot in terms of what it means to be a professional college player and those types of things. And so happy with the improvement and the development, with also understanding that it's the honeymoon phase right now. And so there's a lot more coming down the road.
Mike, what areas do you feel like you are better at this year than you were at the end of the year?
All of them. Honestly, like when you think about year one to year two, the jumps that your program should make. Obviously we had some departures on the defensive line and lost some talent, but when you talk about just like intricacies of the scheme, knowledge of what you're trying to do, strength and conditioning, development, overall program mentality, like from year one to year two, I think everything takes a step forward. And so, we got 16 starters back, and we wouldn't be really good at our jobs if we weren't moving forward with 16 returning starters. And so,
Tougher schedule.
yeah, tougher. Yeah, obviously, ultimately you're talking about wins and losses, and that's still an unround football, bouncing in different directions and having to make plays in critical moments, and those are different things. But are we better? Yeah, across the board, we're significantly better.
When it comes to the conversation about college football playoff formats with auto bids, not auto bids, straight seating, what do you have any thoughts or opinions, or what would you like to see from those conversations this week?
Smart people figure it out. Well, that's what they get paid for. Who just told me I had to take a pay cut? So.
You're gonna be a journalist, yeah. Do you favor 9 conference games over 8?
I think a lot of, in my opinion, just as I look at a lot of these things, none of these issues are linear, right? Everybody wants them to be linear. Do you want 9 or 8? There's a lot more that goes into it, right? What does playoff access look like? How do we find a path to get the most SEC teams into the college football playoff? How does all of it play together? I think there's so much that goes into that conversation that isn't just 9 versus 8. I think it's a lot bigger than that.
Mike, having been in the ACC, how do you feel about this proposal that 4 teams from the SEC automatically would get into a playoff, whereas a lesser or another conference may be relegated to just 2?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of challenges that the people have that are putting this thing together, and I think I think from our perspective, we want to make sure that our teams are protected to the best of our ability with access, because we believe we play in the best conference in the country. And I think that has proven out in the NFL draft every single year, and those things are hard to measure, right? It's hard to measure what it's like going through an 8 or 9 SEC game schedule, and the losses that get accumulated and how that all plays out. And so, the committee's got a tough job to try to figure out some of those things when you're just looking at paper resumes. But I think when you are in this league and you go through the grinder of what this league really is, it's hard to say that this isn't the most talented conference in the country. It bears itself out that way every single year in the NFL draft. And so, again, I don't know what the solution is, but it's a big puzzle, I think, that needs to get put together the right way.
Time for one or two more. You favor one transfer portal window, Mike? When would that be?
Yeah, if you're asking me, again, I always lend to, what are the professional models, and what do they seem to look like? And it certainly seems as though, free agency happens once, not twice, and it happens right after the season before you start practicing. That seems to be the landscape for every single professional league across the world. And so why we believe that shouldn't be how this works, is hard to get your head wrapped around.
Would you be fine moving practice a little later so that you can have the roster building period and then?
But when would the roster building period be? Because you still have academic problems, right? And so your choices are: do you want your roster at the start of the spring semester, or do you want your roster at the start of the summer semester? So there's no in between, right? Because we're still academics. And so if there was an in between, sure. If there was a way to say, sometime between the end of the last game and the start of spring ball, that's when we were going to do it. Like, obviously that would be ideal, but I don't think that fits into the academic calendar. And I don't think there's a lot of presidents lining up to shift the start of the spring semester to marry the college football playoff. And so, if no, but so if basically those are the two options you're left with, right? Do you want, and you just take it back to, okay, we signed freshmen. What is our preference? Is our freshmen have them come in mid-year and try to get ready, or is our preference to have them show up in the summer and get ready? It's clearly been evidence that it's more productive if they show up for the spring semester, in terms of what you can get done. And so there's nowhere else where it's successful another way. And so why we're trying to figure out another way, I don't quite understand.
Thanks for your time, Coach.
Yep. Thank you, guys.